My name is Byron Burton. I got to know these wonderful people when I worked at the Hollywood Reporter, and we won a National Journalism Award for a piece on X-Men, the animated series. Little did we know the show would be a continuation on Disney Plus and become a #1 hit with an Emmy nomination, Gallica win, and it is up for Best Series at the upcoming HCA Astra Awards. So hey, not too bad, right? Some recognition outside of all those VHS sales that they never saw a penny for. But you know what? You guys are giving them all the love, and that's worth more than $3. I can promise you that. First up, you may know her as an esteemed stage actor, an African-American icon, 6 BBC productions, so many nominations, but if you need a shiny, sunny day, there's nobody better to call than Storm. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Allison Seeley-Smith, come to the stage. With looks like Brando, you might wonder why he didn't also become an obese fat pig. That would be because he was filming Kung Fu and then running over, skipping lunch to record X-Men the animated series. Then he continued and decided to be a director as well as an actor on a series called Heartland. It's run 18 seasons now. That's why you can only see him in the fall and in the very beginning of the year. He's stomping onto the stage, Chris Potter, Gambit Cable. We love him. This next person has the respect and dignity to allow me to finish their intro, which I appreciate. On top of being involved in The Good Witch, which Mr. Chris Potter was on for many years before they killed him for entering too early on stage, he co-starred with the legendary Jean Grey, Phoenix, Dark Phoenix, also Jill Valentine in Resident Evil. We've seen a lot of Resident Evil love here. You can't beat her. She was also in Roly Poly Oly. I didn't see that, but I hear it's great. Catherine Disher, come to the stage. God bless you, Catherine Disher.
I wasn't sure you were finished, so I just waited.
Next up, you will find that this woman has generated millions and millions of dollars for various corporations. She started very young, which means she got the worst contracts in the business, and yet she is the most giving, caring, nice person you can meet. Persevering, still doing the best work you could imagine. She's directed on Blue's Clues. She's directed on Care Bears. She just directed George Booza in something new. Allison Seeley-Smith in something new. She gives with all her heart. She dresses to impress. Claire Redfield, Jubilee, the Big Comfy Couches, Lunette the Clown, Allison Court, come to the stage for this beautiful panel. I am in a good mood. If you have any gummies here in the state of Cincinnati, this next gentleman will gladly trade you a selfie for that. He's known as a scientist, this is why he messes with THC within his body for an internal composition discovery from time to time. He's ridden a motorcycle. He's worn a diaper on a series. He's played a cop in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. He's been a sailor in Sinbad carrying a sword around that only Ryan Gosling could bear to carry himself. It's very true. He's smiling right now backstage. He's got a cane, which very well may be across my head in a few moments. Please welcome George Booza Beast from X-Men. When you think about recasting 2 roles, you think, yeah, good luck. That would be Cyclops and Magneto. Those 2 roles were indelibly played by David Himblum and Norm Spencer to perfection. And yet, not only can he sound so similar, but he brings an incredible tact and gravitas and emotion while being fearsome. David Himblum, very fearsome. Matthew Watterson brings the emotion. He's also done all sorts of amazing video game roles. When you stop by his table, you'll look and say, oh, blank word, because there might be kids here. You did that. Well, he did. And I also found out this week he's doing NFL announcements. So Allison Court and I were watching the Bills game, and Here comes this studly British voice that makes Patrick Stewart quiver. Let's bring to the stage the woodsman, muscles of steel. He could play the Man of Steel, but he is Magneto, the master of magnetism, Matthew Watterson. Floyd Norman was here last year. Raise your hand if you met Floyd Norman. Are you a continual Cincinnati Comic Con goer? A young lady here? Okay, there's 3 people. Floyd was the first African American ever hired by Walt Disney. He thinks a lot of Walt. This next gentleman on the other side of the fence, but similar accolade, is the first African American storyboard artist, first African American hired by Mr. Stan Lee. He worked on Spider-Man and Friends. He worked on Care Bears. He worked on Captain Planet. He did a special print for Cincinnati with your acclaimed fountain from downtown here this weekend, just for you guys. No one is more responsible for the success for X-Men than Mr. Larry Houston. And while there was a team of writers and other producers and great things, he added so many scenes from his mind to the page. He did the opening titles, which you all love from the first show that are in the new show, over a weekend. Yeah, that's right, a weekend, because I guess he likes to ignore his wife. So he worked all weekend to do those amazing opening titles we all know and love. Larry, come to the stage. Mr. Larry Houston, everybody, come on. And now, it seems like we're going to be sharing a mic. So first of all, let's have a complaint. I want to have a complaint with X-Men 97. Larry Houston had Rogue and Storm flying around, chit-chatting up there at 16,000 feet. They don't want to get hit by a plane. Rogue would be okay, but Storm, we don't need a one-armed Storm. So they avoided that height. But they were best friends. We didn't see a lot of that in X-Men 97. I'm getting to. So, Storm and Rogue, in the original series, best friends. We're going to be sharing a mic now. I will stand. She's just back from shooting a show in New Brunswick, if I'm correct. She is the Astra Award nominated, the legend, Rogue herself, Miss Lenore Zann. Come on up. Since you two are sharing a mic, we're going to start at this end. I love these two. Don't you guys love Rogue and Storm being best friends? Let's get that in season 2. I'm pushing to reignite the flying friendship. Let's coin that, I think, the flying friendship.
That'll be the name of the new show.
Okay, well, Lenore, not to toot your horn, but I think we should toot your horn. You've just released your book, A Rogue's Tale. It's a wonderful memoir. We've been selling them today, and it's been wonderful to see. Everybody in the cast wants one, so you're, and me as well.
They want to know if they're in it.
Can you talk about finding the time from leaving politics to auditioning to getting this show to being on the road traveling and then deciding to, look, it's a lot of work to write and then hope it's good, and then it is good, and then you keep going and going, and you wrote this book, and now you're working on another live action show, and you flew in 3 flights to get here. She's out tomorrow on 3 more flights to shoot Monday, but she didn't want to cancel. Chris Potter had somebody come in from Germany just to meet him. These X-Men, they're wonderful people, and they will be here no matter what for you fans.
Yeah,
That's
we
a
love our
beautiful
fans.
thing. We do not cancel under any circumstance outside COVID. So talk about this whirlwind year.
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you so much for all being here. We all love you, and it's so nice to meet you one-on-one and hear that we made your childhoods, and that now you're introducing your kids and grandkids to our show. It's amazing. It's like overwhelming. What a great opportunity this is for all of us who are, especially for those that were originals in the show. Throughout my life, I've lived many, many lives, and a lot of people have said, why don't you write a book? You got to write a book about all your adventures and misadventures. and I just never had time because I was too busy living it. And when you're busy living and you got a full life, it's hard to just sit down and take the time to ruminate and then write. So my hat's off to any of the writers in the room, any of the artists in the room, because it ain't easy. But I decided that once I had stopped doing politics, I was in politics for 12 years, and then I got the call from Disney, Marvel, to say, come back and reboot. We're going to reboot the show, and we'd like you to come back and play Rogue again. I thought, well, maybe this is my opportunity now to start writing and to talk about my origin story in Australia, Canada, the States, and what brought me to become, a superhero, and the fact that I think we all have the ability to be a superhero in this life, and we all have our own special, unique talents and skills, and that we need to feel that we're worthy, because so many people do not feel that they're worthy, and they don't feel like they're accepted by society or their families. So my book is really to try and show people that, hey, we're all worthy, you're worthy of love and respect, and that we're all in this together. And so when I was doing the Comic-Cons this last couple of years, I would have to get on a lot of flights. And I noticed that when I got on the flight, suddenly I had a lot of time to just think and write. And I found I got into the zone as I was flying, because nobody could interrupt me. I couldn't go into the kitchen and make a cup of tea or anything. I mean, I was there. And so, for instance, I went to Australia last Christmas, and I wrote 4 chapters on the way from LA to Sydney, because it's a 16-hour flight. And I wrote 4 chapters on the way back. I didn't sleep. I didn't watch movies. I didn't do anything. I just wrote, but I was in the zone. So it's been a pleasure being able to put my thoughts to paper, and I hope that the folks that pick up the book really enjoy it. But again, we're just so honored to be here, and I love this cast, and I love all of you. So thank you very much for that question.
I love this cast too, and I have to say they get along so well, and it's a beautiful thing. And I've not seen this. We had such synergy yesterday in the photo ops, and there were so many laughs. And Catherine Disher and Potter were recanting a scene from the first Good Witch movie. Kathy, can you talk about the early Good Witch movies and this iconic scene? I would just love to hear this.
I don't know, is the panel 4 hours long or just
Yes.
an hour? Okay. Well, Chris and I were in 7 Good Witch movies, 1 a year for 7 years. You were the sheriff, right?
I think so.
Yes, you were the sheriff. And I was the busybody mayor. And then Chris does this incredible show, Heartland, that he's been doing for, what is it, 18 seasons now?
18 years, yeah.
God, 18. Have you finally paid off your mortgage?
3 of them.
Oh! Sorry, my heart bleeds for you. So unfortunately, he couldn't do the series, and they made it into a series, and we did 7 years of the series. So, but we're all very grateful, all of us who've been involved in the Good Witch movies and the series, to all the fans who kept it going for so many years. And I've had so many women come up to me and say, I could only get my husband to watch The Good Witch with me when I told him you were the voice of Jean Grey. So, it was a pleasure working with you.
What you're referring to, I think, is that you asked me if I had ever arrested you
Oh, right.
on The Good Witch, because I didn't remember that.
I begged you to, I believe.
That's right.
And then I yelled police brutality,
Yeah.
I think. So yeah, no, we had a great time on those movies. Once a year, it was like once a year we were all doing other stuff and other series, and we would get together. But I remember you.
Taking the red eye in to do.
Oh, that, but also you were doing Kung Fu, and I was doing Forever Night while we were doing the X-Men.
Yes, that too.
And we would show up exhausted at the end of the week. You were in sunglasses half the time, I remember, in the studio, and on Fridays to do the group records, which were kind of chaotic and magical all at the same time.
That was a busy time for us, both of us, I guess.
George was on The Brain then, right? Or what were you on?
I was on
Maniac Mansion. Yeah. So, well, in my case, I know I was working 12 or 14-hour days back then and fighting. A lot of choreographed fighting and action and being in Chinatown and Toronto and so on, and then 9-10 pages of dialogue a day and David Carradine on top of it, which was always enigmatic and challenging and fun. But and then 3 little girls at home under the age of 5, I guess, at that time.
Those were his kids, just to
6.
clarify.
Yeah, and it was a real whirlwind. Then down into the studio to do the show and laugh my head off. It was a great, busy, all-encompassing time of our lives, all of us in Toronto. We were all busy working on different mediums, theater and television and films, and then doing this one-off animated series. It was kind of, at the time, unique in Toronto to be doing. There weren't a lot of animated series being recorded, I don't think, in Toronto. There were a lot.
That was actually the golden time of cartoons.
So I'm complete. They weren't a lot for me.
They just didn't do, just not
But
for
you know,
you.
but Chris, you're absolutely right. This was a unique show, and that most of the other shows were for small children. Yeah, very cartoony that we were doing. But you're right. This was a completely unique show in that regard.
Well, put it this way. I guess what I meant was most of the performers on this show that I would meet at the studio, I had met and worked with or seen on a theater stage, like Allison, and or on a film set or on a TV set, but I didn't know through animation. So that we all came from different walks of the business.
This is going to go on a wavy tangent, but Kevin Conroy, who passed away a couple years ago, was the voice of Batman. And anybody, raise your hand if you liked X-Men and Batman, the animated series. Okay. Everyone. The 2 best shows of the 90s and still the 2 best animated shows of all time. And when you think about Batman, Kevin Conroy did a Bruce Wayne voice and a Batman voice, and they were both incredible. And there can be many great Batman going forward, but he was like the 508th audition Andrea Romano heard, and she said, this is it. And we all know this is it for Batman. To circle back to what Lenore said about God bless you writers, you artists, anyone that wants to feed a creative feeling and they have that self-doubt, there's nobody that's Gambit but Chris Potter. Chris Potter created that voice. That sound in our minds will always be him. It was perfection. It just felt true, and there's no substitute for it. But I want to touch for all you here and then this live stream that'll go out later to the internet. You were like, fuck, am I doing good? You were very self-conscious. And there's a woman here from Germany that flew just to meet Chris. And if he knew at age 22, recording Gambit and doing his other career roles, that people would fly across the continents to come meet him, it would have helped him breathe a little easier, I think.
Okay, I think there's a question in there.
As an artist,
I think I'm always insecure about everything I do as a performer, and I think I might have crossed that point in my life eventually, where but in my early years, yeah, everything I did. So I think Allison touched on it last con we did together, Allison Court, about how the producers and directors behind the glass in the studio used to gesticulate and talk to each other between our takes, and that I finally realized that she and I both interpreted that as they were talking about us, and they didn't like it. And so that started the wave of, they could have been talking about what they ordered for lunch, for all I know, but to me it transferred as,
Oh, yeah.
you take over.
Oh, they weren't talking about lunch. No, it was, and I felt so bad at our last panel for Chris. I reminded everybody of what we would witness. We would be in the booth together recording, and then our voice director, Dan, would be like, that's great, hold on. And it would go silent. And all we'd see through the window was all these men from Marvel and Fox and whatnot. Like, it was like, and we're just like, oh, okay, so I guess we sucked, and we'll probably get replaced. It's been nice working with you, you know. And Chris at our last panel is like, you're right, that's where all of the self-doubt as an actor came from. Like, you know? So, yeah, interesting times.
Yeah, it'd be similar if any of you were doing your job, and to the side, your boss was talking to the side in the ear of the, someone else, and you think, it must be talking about me. That's how we felt. At least I did. I didn't have.
In most cases, they were.
George, did you just come in there and be like, yeah, I'm Beast, baby. This is it.
Yeah, probably.
No, seriously, how did you feel coming in and doing Beast with, well, first of all, we deserve it's Saturday, a little taste. Give us a little taste of Beast. Drop it down, George. Come on right now.
Oh, my stars and garters.
Come on, there we go. Come on. Yes, sir. How did you find that? I've never asked you that.
Well, finding Beast wasn't very difficult because I related to him personally. This is the story I tell practically at every con, that I got bullied as a kid. I was fat, and eventually I got tired of being bullied, and I fought back and realized that I could do some damage. But I always tried to avoid confrontation and violence at all costs, so that when it came around to playing Beast, it was a very easy transition from my personal life to the character. But at the same time that I was doing that, I was playing a 4-year-old mutant kid on a TV series called Maniac Mansion. And Joe Flaherty was our dad, and all the people from SCTV were the head writers. And so I was dressed as a 4-year-old kid with a page boy haircut, and I'd hop on my motorcycle and ride from the studio, which was about 1.5 miles away from where we recorded X-Men, record a session of X-Men, and go back to filming Maniac Mansion, where I talked like, Mom, Dad, in a falsetto voice, and you just made the transition from one to the other with no real segue. It was just, I mean, this comes from all the years of theater where we would play bridge backstage until you heard the word before you had to appear on stage, and you were still looking at your hand, and if you had a grand slam, you waited until the last second to lay down and go out there and do your line. It was
I think George was probably the only one of us that knew the X-Men comics and read them and was excited about the fact that they were going to make
that's
this.
what blew me away, was when I'm reading the audition sides, and they called it Project X. Well, geez, that's half the title already. And I'm reading the lines, and I had read X-Men in the 1960s. So I'm going, holy mackerel, this is Project X, this is bloody X-Men. And so I already went in there with that pre-knowledge of what I was reading for, and I wanted it more than anything. As a Canadian actor, what you really wanted was a sign of legitimacy, which was being a part of a big American production. No, am I right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It validated you as a performer, that you were wanted by a Hollywood entity. So when it came to reading for something like X-Men, this was a real big deal.
Yeah,
Was
you're
it?
not legitimate in Canada until you've left the country and made it somewhere else.
Yeah.
And if you stay in the country and are successful, no one will ever know.
They all say, hey, don't I know you from somewhere? Yeah, we did time together.
So Matthew, don't come to Canada. Keep your career going. Matthew is a bunch of us, I don't think even met Matthew until coming to conventions, because we all record, or I record personally in Toronto most of the time, and Matthew's in LA. So Matthew, how is it meeting all of the old legacy cast?
The strangest part is that I'm 45 years old. I am not a child. Like, I have been a grown-ass man for longer than I was a kid at this point. And so, like, but every time I'm at a convention, it's like, well, you're fine, you're a kid. I'm like, my back hurts, my neck hurts, my ankle's screwed up, I blew out a knee. I'm like, I need it. Like, I'm not young, I've been beaten up. But it's, well, you're the young one, you can do this and that. But the funny thing is, like, I knew a couple of the new cast before the show. I knew AJ, I knew JP, but most of us met for the first time at the premiere because we record solo now. And so, you know, Ray, who plays Cyclops, it turns out Ray lives 4 minutes from me because we both live an hour and a half north of Los Angeles. We don't live in LA. And we were recording for 2.5 years, and it wasn't until the premiere when you know, somebody sent a message out and they said, hey, are you driving down from Ojai? And I said, yes. And Ray went, wait, what? And I said, well, I live there. He said, well, so do I. And we'd both been recording from home 5 minutes from each other, and no one in production had said, by the way, Ray and you live right next to each other. You should say hi. Apparently, they just decided none of you are going to like each other, so we're going to keep you apart. But the nice thing has been that everybody gets along great. And you hear that sometimes on shows, like everybody gets along great, and then 7 years later, there's an E! True Hollywood story about the 3 murders that happened backstage. So far, no one's murdered anyone.
So far. Larry, you work at Marvel. Do you want to murder anyone?
Who's murdered?
Well, there've been some. But no, I guess I'm the old guy of the group because I started reading comic books when I was in the '60s, and I've always been an X-Men fan and comic book fan. And so when I got the chance to head up and direct the X-Men, it was like a hand in a glove. Came right together, and so I knew everything about the X-Men because I had been reading it for so long. So I knew exactly how these characters should work together. And and being a fanboy, I tried to make sure the show was something that you guys would enjoy, because I just poured my fanboy part into the shows, and I had been a director for about 12 years before I got the show, so it all came together. And so yeah, I knew the show, and yeah, I'm the old guy of the group, but I'm happy for it. It's fine, you know.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm going back to Matthew now. I have a plan, just
Uh-oh.
so it's clear. So Matthew, you go back, you watch the old Magneto episodes. They're all great, pretty sparse. I think Magneto and Sinister were in about the same amount of episodes. And then you realize your arc in X-Men 97. It's like if you're watching Friends and you're Gunther the coffee maker, and it's like, we're doing a show with Gunther being the lead. Because you're the head of the mansion, and you have Romance with Rogue, and then you have I Want to Be Good, and then you have Let Me Go to the Polls half naked after Catherine Disher frees me. Magneto was right. And in the show. So, I mean, I don't know how many scripts they gave you at first, but you go back and look at the old shows, like, okay, he's great. He pops in, he's great. And then you're like, oh, I'm the key to so much of this show now. I mean, it's got to be a great feeling to step into a role that was magnanimously approved but sparse, and now you're integral. Can you grab the mic also?
Yeah, I mean, it honestly, it was terrifying because you know, you find out you get the job, and that's brilliant. And then you look at David gave a performance of the character that for so many people is the voice they hear when they read the comics. And then if it's not David, it's either Ian McKellen or Michael Fassbender. So you go, I have this job, it's great. Oh, that's who I'm going to get compared to. This is going to go well. But you're going to take the job. And then you start, you know, and then you start having meetings and you start being told what's going to happen. And you know, we don't get the entire season's scripts, and we only get the scripts we're in, or at least I do. Maybe other people get others, but I only get the ones that I'm in. So sometimes, you know, you're not in an episode, and then you're in the one following it, and you don't know what happened. Like, I didn't know what happened in the episodes I wasn't in until the show came out. And so a lot of it, one of the things that you have to sort of learn very quickly is, especially as we're recording solo now for the most part, you have to have a huge amount of trust in, you know, our incredible voice director, Meredith, and in the writers and the producers and the directors, because you are doing what you read off of the page, and then sometimes they'll say, that's great, we need it to be more like this or more like that, because they know what it's going to look like, they know what either they're going to direct other people to do or what other people have done. And it may not be the thing that immediately came to you, but you just have to trust that they know the show they're making. And that is something that can be difficult and that you have to sort of learn to do. Sometimes some people it probably comes easily to, some people it's more difficult to, but that's one of the things about the way that the show is made now. You have to have a huge amount of faith in the production crew who are making it, because I don't know how Lenore's going to say a line, or how Chris is going to say a line, or how Ross is going to say a line. So you have to think, I think I know what it's going to be like, and then sometimes you're told, like, no, that take is, we need to adjust that, not because you're wrong, and a lot of the time you assume it's because you're wrong. It's not. Sometimes it's because I'm wrong. But you have to have a huge amount of faith in the people making the show, and fortunately the people making the show are amazing.
In a lot of ways, it's like reading a novel with missing chapters.
Yeah.
And so you don't know what happened in the interim, or where you would play in what comes after. And then a lot of times it's kind of hard to fit that all together.
Well, I've actually asked for the scripts that I'm not in because I'm too old to get in there. And I have like 50 questions then before. And you know how they say previously on X-Men? You get the scripts and there's a previously on X-Men on the whole front page. And I would read those and go, I still don't know what's going on. And they go, oh, that's because that's what's happening in the universe, not necessarily in the cartoon. I'm like, guys, I don't need to know what's going on in the universe. I do need to know what's going on in our world. What do you think, Larry? I mean, do you think we should all be, are you involved in that? I mean, that sort of a structure of...
I'm not involved with the distribution of all the scripts, but when we were doing our versions, I think we would send the whole script up to the voice director so he could see the entire thing.
Yep.
And then walk you through all the scenes and scenarios so that you could tell what, you could get an idea of where you want your headspace to be. And to,
But even back then, you didn't get the scripts you weren't in.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, we sent it up. We sent it to Canada. we sent the whole thing.
It was in the mail.
It was, yeah. And back then there was no internet, so it's like it's snail mail. We sent everything always to you guys.
Couriers would come to our houses.
Yes. Yeah.
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 But they wouldn't come to the houses where you weren't in it.
Oh. Yeah. Well, one thing I wanted to add to what you were saying was that when the first season of the X-Men, because you did an excellent job as Magneto.
Yes, give a round of applause for Matthew Watterson. This man has 3 kids at home. His wife is the voice of Cable's computer AI, Chris Potter. You're stepping into a situation you shouldn't be, but we'll forgive you. But yes, Matthew has an amazing wife. She's also Wonder Woman. She's incredible in that Justice League action. Am I right on that credit? All right. She's fantastic. She's at home right now handling all those businesses because they're in a wonderful relationship. So he can come here to be with you. Another round of applause for Rachel. Everybody, come on. Let's give it up. It may end up on Instagram, and she's like, you know what, Matthew? That was nice. If not, this audience got it. But no.
No, what I was going to say was also to add to what I was saying before is that in the first season of the show, I wanted to establish that Xavier and Magneto were frenemies. And so the last episode of the first season didn't have it in the script. So I rewrote the script so that you saw that these guys liked each other, but they had 2 different methods. And so I think it's the last third of I think it's called The Final Decision. I made you his friend, and you saved your friend, and then you parted ways, but it established that you guys were comrades. And because it wasn't in the show, the first time you appeared, you were like, I'm going to just kill everybody. And that was it. It was like, I think it was the 3rd episode. So I wanted to really establish your relationship with Xavier. And then consequently after that, the first live action film came out, and the director didn't read a comic book at all. I think Bryan Singer. He just watched my series. And suddenly you guys became, Xavier and Magneto became friends in his show, in his live action show, based upon what we had done in the animated show. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Larry is asking Fox for $1,200 a month.
Yes. So money.
And rightfully so. Allison Seeley Smith.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's all. That's all we need. I'll never forget. Allison Seeley Smith, rounds of applause. That's great. Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, Jason Statham, they have rules. You can only take 3 punches to the face. You can never knock me down. It's all contracted. There's a behind-the-scenes amazing documentary on X-Men 97. When they cut to your shot in the turquoise top, I am Storm, Mistress of the Elements, and the hands fly out. Did you get this camera wide because the hands are flying, baby? You have such a way of embodying this character and a voice that no one can duplicate. I gave the same compliment to Chris, but you bring a power that could shatter the earth and break most Sony decibel systems, I think. Can you talk about all the BAFTA productions, the things, were all your characters coming from that strength, or was this something you really developed for Storm when you came into the role?
Well, I think when you're born with a voice like this, you kind of got to figure out what you're going to do with it. And I've been lucky enough that I've still gotten to play a range of roles. I mean, I remember, I don't know if it's Monster by Mistake or if there's another one, but I loved playing this 8-year-old boy, Cleon. And so, yeah, it's a versatile voice, but I do manage to do authority pretty well. So when I went into the audition and for X-Men the first time around back in the 90s, I was out in Stratford, and this is one of the largest theaters in Canada, and I'm doing Shakespeare and feeling like, okay, I'm there now. I'm at the top of my game. I'm out in Stratford, and my agent calls, and she wants me to go and audition for this cartoon, and I'm like, no! Because at this point, all I know about cartoons is, hey, boo-boo. So if it's not Yogi Bear, I don't know anything about it. So I go in there, and they give us the little thing and the little description, and there's nothing in this description that I can pull anything from. I don't know. And I've driven in from Stratford to do this audition. I just want to get back out there. They're telling me stuff about mutants, and she's from North Africa. There's all these actresses in the room. I mean, there must have been at least 10 or 12 women in the room on their second, third, and fourth callback for these auditions. And they're from every corner of the African continent. So, for 2 reasons: 1, respect, and 2, because it's obvious that at this point you're not talking about the authenticity of any kind of African accent. I'm not going to go in there and try to out-African the Africans. Wouldn't be good. But then what do I hold on to? If I don't know the comics, if I don't know, and then finally, of course, somebody says, she's a queen. And I knew I could do that. And the rest of it just came because authority does come pretty easily, and it's a testament to the writing, to Larry, and what Larry then passed on to the people who took and grabbed X-Men 97, that there are layers to all of our characters. And so you don't get to just sit in, I am queen. They give you something, and that's such a gift for any actor to be able to have a character to play where there are layers, and you've got to peel it back and peel it back. How can you be so powerful and be terrified of a box because you're claustrophobic, right? How can you command the Arctic winds and still listen to that adversary in your head that tells you you're not enough or you're too much or whatever? And so for that, I do. I thank the writers and the creators of the first series and the second, that they've given us some wonderful things to play with and allowed me to find some range even within this voice.
Allison Court, you would think being in the Fox family was a bonus, and then Sydney, you basically got the George Lucas treatment of, okay, Harrison Ford, you can play Han Solo, and then they're casting Indiana Jones, and George is like, anybody but Harrison. Sydney I Want Her gives you Lydia and Beetlejuice, which you freaking earned and nailed.
That wasn't Sydney's decision.
Oh, well,
No, it wasn't his show originally, so he doesn't get to claim credit for Lydia.
good. Don't give Sydney the. But you had done a hit show for 90-some episodes with Beetlejuice,
Yeah.
and you're coming into Jubilee, and instead of like, oh, she's great, let's throw her this, Sydney was like,
Well, to be fair for Sydney, he was actually back in the day when we recorded on DAT, so it was a tape, and he would be getting those late night tapes, and he was actually in making edits at the late in the game in LA, working for Fox. So he was so sick of my voice. He was really sick of my voice, and I get it. I'm sick of my voice too after this many years. Yeah. So. He just did not want to have to listen to me again. So I was not hired for Jubilee. And then whoever they hired, you guys
Larry
you
said
guys
no.
It said it didn't work, so they convinced, it was probably Dan Hennessy that said, bring in Al. So I came in, and then it was every single time I opened my mouth, Sydney was like, no, sounds like Lydia, do it again. So yeah, back to how Chris was feeling about the whole job insecurity. Okay, I don't know how long I'm going to be here with you guys. But it also worked on many levels. One, it was great because he was right. I had been playing Lydia for so long that I was living in that voice. So it forced me out of the up here kind of nasal cavity thing that I would do for Lydia, and a little bit more down here, a little bit more angsty teen. So it was great as a voice actor, and I guess it kind of played into the character of Jubilee, who didn't know what was going on and had a lot of insecurity in her life, and was relying on the family around her to make her feel like it was okay. And that's what these guys did. Hanging out in the lunchroom with these guys during recordings was sort of the saving grace of it all for that first season.
I remember when Morph was running amok in the mansion with Xavier gone, and he convinced Gambit to kiss Rogue, and he did, and he got zapped, and he convinced you to go to the Friends of Humanity meeting, and probably the most iconic line ever regarding bigotry in animation, and you delivered it with such emotion, was, "What did we ever do to you?" And he said, "You were born." That was so powerful. And so you have the emotion you brought to the role, but specifically you're just, why? Why now? And it speaks to the times today. It spoke in the 60s, and Larry being an African-American and saw the mutant thing was for homosexuality, for race, for all these things. Really, it was just beautifully done, and you guys taught a lot of social lessons with the show. And thank you, Allison, for your performance in that moment, I have to say.
Yeah, that was that line I was surprised we got through, but the voice actor who said the line, I can't remember his name, but when he said, you were born, was like such a strong line. But we had really good writers that they knew how to write to a general audience, but also simplify a lot of the complex adult problems we had to deal with into simple words that a young mind could understand. And that was like a really powerful line with that. When I saw it written and then heard the recordings, like, oh damn, that's strong. But it was true. So we had good writers who could write like on two levels. One would be, you'd see all the explosions and laser beams and robots going on, but they wrote adult subtext underneath everything so that when you saw the shows again when you're a little bit older, you pick up like, oh my God, they're talking about this, they're talking about that. It went over your head as a kid. And so we had really good writers to write really poignant lines that live on forever.
We got to meet the beautiful woman, now over 60. She came to a con that George was at, I believe, who wrote Beauty and the Beast, this wonderful woman. It was sort of a Cyrano de Bergerac type story where Beast is in love with a girl that's blind, and he's trying to help her get her eyesight, but he wonders if she'll still accept him when she can see what he looks like. And we did a table read of that. We did 2 table reads, one with Externally Yours with Chris Potter in New Orleans, and then in Portland we did that with George, and that was an amazing experience. George, can you speak to revisiting the script and what you remember from seeing it for the first time?
But it's my favorite episode because it gave me a chance as an actor to play beyond what Beast usually does, which is spout a bunch of scientific gobbledygook and beat the heck out of the enemy. So it was a chance to explore some real emotions. But it was also a very poignant factor in that the only person that could really save this girl's life and her sight was somebody who was despised by her father because of prejudice. And in the end, he has to secretly go in there to help the girl, and his father doesn't find out until the end that it was Beast that saved her, and that he ends up saving him as well as the friends of humanity descend upon them. And then he has to part with her to save her life again, because he knows that if he stays with her, eventually the friends of humanity will go after her. And so he has to let her go and live with that loss for the rest of his life. So that was probably one of the deepest things that I got to play in all the years of doing X-Men.
You know, and we got to, in a, I think, further episode, I think it was in the Phoenix Saga, where you're typing on a keyboard, and I added a little picture of her on your keyboard to try and make reference to that episode.
Yeah.
You know, since I was the director, I could do that.
Yes.
And Kathy,
And his parting words to her were, "Carry my love with you always."
that's a tattoo I have on my ribs. So my bluff
Please
has
don't
been-
encourage him.
my bluff has been
Please,
called.
I beg
my
you.
bluff has been called. I actually respect that. I'm tattooless. I'm finicky about needles. Kathy,
Oh God. Yes. I'm just a little worried about you. You're all over the place. I'm just worried where you're going to take us. Go ahead.
I want to talk. Well, we've talked about the emotional moments of the show, and I do want to talk about the Phoenix Saga, which Larry mentioned. I mean, as a kid watching that, we were very concerned for Jean when she blocked the X-Men in the safe compartment of the shuttle as they were coming back, and you're trying to keep a force field around yourself to guide the ship. The temperature's rising, and it's a suicide mission until the Phoenix intervenes. But the way you played that, and then I want to juxtapose your thoughts on that moment to when, as Phoenix, you were flying into the sun with that.
Well, Jean was the sort of heart and soul of, the emotional center of the X-Men. And I know that's a very dramatic scene. The Blackbird's going down, and she's crawling her way to the front.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and it's a great scene. And Larry, I every time I do a panel with Larry, I learn new stuff about the show. And Larry had said in a couple of panels ago, you said you wanted to do the Phoenix Saga. You knew it would take 9 episodes.
Yeah.
And you wanted to do it right, which no one has since, frankly.
No.
No.
Let's give a round of applause
Yeah.
for Catherine Disher and Larry Houston.
Well, but I don't know about, I'd love to hear what your favorite moment in the Phoenix Saga is. My favorite moment is when she's flying up to the sun
Right.
with the crystal.
Yeah.
And, she's Phoenix, but she thinks she's Jean. She thinks she's going to die. And all she can talk about is the beauty that she sees around her. And she says, she kind of gasps and goes, "Oh, the light, it's so beautiful. Oh, Scott, I wish you could see it." And that was always my favorite line, and it just said
Right.
Jean to me. What is your favorite moment in the Phoenix Saga?
Of that saga, one of the moments I thought that I added that wasn't in the script was like when you and Scott kiss because she's getting ready to go into the sun, and you guys float up, and you guys are floating around with the kiss, and then she leaves him like that to take off, becoming the Phoenix bird. None of that was in the script. I added that because I thought that was a good place for a nice romantic moment for them flying around. I did a lot of that, stuff here and there, adding stuff to the show.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's why Larry Houston is an Inkpot award-winning artist, which is a very rare distinction. We love to get the X-Men together. We don't always get to do a panel. We don't always get to have 8 people together. We thank you guys for coming out. We're going to do one more conversation tomorrow. It's going to be equally fun, equally memorable. My heart was touched with the stories today. I love this group of people. I know you love them as well. Can we have a huge round of applause as we go back upstairs? Thank you guys so much. It means the world to us. I think we're actually going to photo ops next, and then we'll be back at the tables to close the day. God bless you. Thank you guys for driving up here.
Thank you all
flying.
very much.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
guys. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You're fantastic.